the latest edition of T2RL Talks. And today in the studio with me, I have Amanda Campbell, who is now, I think, becoming a fairly familiar voice on these podcasts. And we have a very special guest in Srdjan Prokic from Air Serbia. Air Serbia is perhaps not as well known amongst our audience as some of the airlines we talk about. And I'm going to ask Srdjan just to introduce Air Serbia briefly in a moment. What we're here to talk about today is the market for airline online direct sales. We fairly recently published our market survey of the vendors of technology that supports airline direct sales. And we're struck by the way in which the market for airline booking engines has evolved over the last 30 years since the first online bookings were made by British Midland Airlines in 1996. So without further ado, let's just introduce Srdjan and maybe talk a little bit about Air Serbia, set it in context. Where are you? What sort of markets do you serve? And what's the outlook for Air Serbia right now?
Sure. Hi, Ivan. Hi, Ian. Hi, Amanda. Thanks for having me here. It's a great pleasure. I am head of e-commerce of Air Serbia. I've been in the company for the last 7 years. Did many interesting projects. And shortly about Air Serbia, we are actually quite old company. Even maybe we are not known for many of your listeners. So company will turn 100 years actually next year in 2027. It started as Aeroput, or in English Airway. Then it transferred to YAT, Yugoslavian air transport company, and then Air Serbia. We were in alliance with Etihad for around 10 years. And since the last 2 years, or actually a year and a half, we are completely state-owned company. Company is just briefly, to tell you, growing from year to year. Last year we had more than 4.5 million passengers. We are hoping to reach 5 million this year. We are expanding, every year we are adding, around 10 new destinations, mostly serving Europe destinations. We are also flying to China, 2 cities in USA, Chicago, New York. We have just launched, or we are about to launch the flights to Toronto in Canada. Recently launched the direct flights to Baku and many other destinations. So yeah, that's in short.
Yeah, and from a technology perspective, going back to the days of YAT, Air Serbia has a rich technological heritage, and in fact, you used to run your PSS in-house based on Unisys hardware.
Yeah, that's actually was a surprise for me since I'm relatively new in the industry and in the company for just about 7 years. And just a few weeks ago, my colleague from PSS showed me the manual for all the yacht reservation system. And we quickly went through it and just remember how actually advanced it was for its time. Of course, then Yacht had some issues. It was probably, I'm guessing, hard to maintain huge internal IT team who would keep developing that. So after that, we moved to Amadeus, used it for probably several years, and once we joined Etihad Alliance, we moved to Sabre, like every other airline that was part of Alliance, so we can kind of more tightly integrate with other partners in Alliance.
Okay, and just on a personal note, we were saying before we started recording that I had the privilege and pleasure of visiting YAT and their in-house PSS setup in the late 1990s, and very impressive it was too. Amanda, we've just published the outlook for airline direct sales, and once again we see that the market, broadly speaking, is split about 50-50. So airlines across the world, taken on average, are doing about half of their business in direct channels and half in indirect channels. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the variations are like 1% plus or minus over the last few years, certainly since 2022 anyway. I think what shifts that we do see is very much in terms of the business model mix in the industry. So, for example, if we see a lot more low-cost carriers flying, for example, then the market share, the PBs that they carry, will have an impact on the market share. If there's more network airlines flying PBs, then we see the mix change. So it's been very, very stable after the last few years, absolutely.
Yeah, and we still see some regional variations. I think some regions are a little bit more likely to go direct than others. Asia Pac is the one I'm thinking of that is probably a little more indirect at the moment.
Yeah. I think Asia Pac, for a lot of reasons, are probably favouring the indirect channel. There are a lot of full service carriers in that particular area. There's a lot of partnerships as well, which the GDS relationships are very conducive to supporting. There's a lot of O&D journeys and so forth. So yeah, just generally, it's an area that's very conducive to indirect sales.
Okay, and in terms of where the technology is coming from, still more than a third of the market by passenger volumes is developing their online booking solutions in-house. But Srdjan, despite the heritage at Air Serbia, you've very much gone with the online booking solution from your PSS vendor, from Sabre.
Yeah, actually, we are taking a hybrid approach that you really nicely described in your report, and I was quite surprised that there is so many airlines that are building something in-house or something custom with their partners. So we are actually taking hybrid approach. On the web, we are using Sabre Digital Experience, which is part of Sabre Sonic solution IBE. And for our mobile app, we have joined forces with one of our partners. It's company IER that is famous in check-in world, and Maureva that is kind of famous in revenue accounting management. And they wanted to build a retail app, basically for booking, check-in, and all the support services. They were looking for a partner. We are looking to build an app from scratch. So we joined forces and built something custom.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No problem. I will just, maybe tell you a little bit about each of those platforms that we are using. So on web, I would say that, the solution that we have, pre-made by big vendor is quite good because, it's a low risk. It's, developed, on a defined cadence with other partners. There is a predictable roadmap, and of course it's supporting many airline services, bundles, but I would say that most important feature and most valuable feature is that 2 years ago we have added dynamic pricing and dynamic availability to our booking engine, and that has made us very competitive on the market, but that also created some challenges. Because pushing these dynamic prices that are available on your direct channel is actually not easy, to other, let's say, acquisition channels like meta searchers, for example, that are quite important for each airline and where we are competing with OTAs. So what we have did is actually we have built a custom direct feed for one of the big OTAs, while the other big ones are using actually static prices filed in ATPCO and then using availability messages to construct prices. And what we saw is that the meta searcher having direct dynamic pricing feed is actually having a double conversion rate compared to those who are using ATPCO prices. So for us, now it's very important to try to push these dynamic prices to as much meta searchers as we can, and also thinking about how will we push this to AI agents that will most likely become the new meta searchers. Some place where people will discover flights, plan their trips, compare prices, airlines, and offers. So.
Right. I mean, that's something really, really interesting, and I suspect we would see it reflected across other airlines as well, which is that where you're able to push your dynamic pricing into the market, you're seeing tremendous return on that investment.
Yeah, exactly.
Amanda, just picking up on some of that, and in the report that we've published recently, we've given a little bit of a historical summary of where this market has started and where it's come from. And if we look back 30 years, I know you're far too young to remember that, but if we look back 30 years, an IBE was really just a simple user interface that enabled the PSS to be exposed to bookings on the internet. But nowadays, IBEs, I'm not even sure we should still be using that term, because we've got really quite sophisticated integrated sets of utilities that are part of the online booking experience, and the things that Srdjan's describing, where yes, we've got a vendor that we're working with for mobile, and we're working with Sabre for the main IBE, but then we're doing dynamic pricing for that's increasingly common these days in the world of online bookings, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually hard to know where the IBE starts and where it stops these days. You know, when I first started working in the industry, it was very much like the orchestration layer, then plus the front end. Do you know? And the some of the logic, the shopping logic, pricing logic, and all of that was being done in the actual IBE itself. Now it's absolutely complex, and just knowing with someone doing the front end differently, someone doing the orchestration differently, it is all changing. And I think we've had conversations about it before, and I think it's going to go full circle as well as we move towards OOSD and sort of integrated core systems that are built on the newer technologies. A lot of the power will be in that central technology stack, and that the IBE itself will again be like a thin client sitting on that stack, a little bit like it was, back in the day, when we first had websites selling tickets, where it was just a window into the PSS. That's basically what the IBE was. So I think we're going to go full circle again. It's a very interesting space, but very, very complicated.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing is airlines who are at the leading edge of some of these developments are looking to create an offer management solution which can then be rolled out in any channel, whether that is their indirect channels using NDC, or in some cases a proprietary API, or whether it's their direct channels, their mobile channels. But essentially, I think airlines want the answer to be the same, however the customer is coming to them. So let's think about one of the buzzwords of today, and I think it's been mentioned already, AI. We're hearing an awful lot about agentic AI, and about how maybe agents, artificial intelligence agents, are going to step into the distribution chain and maybe displace some of the existing players, or maybe augment them. Srdjan, are you actively developing solutions either using AI or designed to interface with AI in Air Serbia?
We are definitely working on that. Scanning market, talking with a lot of potential vendors, maybe even planning for some proof of concept projects. Very, very, I would say, early and hard to integrate AI and to achieve what actually Amanda was describing, how to unify the whole experience, not just have let's say IBE as a transactional layer, and then when you go to, let's say, submit a claim, that's a totally different app that doesn't know what you booked, and your history, if you are maybe high value loyalty member that maybe should be treated differently than someone who just sporadically travel with us. So the issue is actually the AI is pretty advanced. It can orchestrate, understand a lot of data, but the connection part, airlines still don't have these MCP layers that can connect to PSS, to, let's say, claim systems, to DCS, and many other systems that are involved in whole customer journey. So I'm thinking that's the biggest challenge we are facing right now, and probably to have the AI experience that we are imagining, we'll need to have some orchestration layers that will help AI on top of it to understand all the data and to actually provide a good experience for our passengers.
Yeah, and based on announcements over the last year or so, Sabre as an organization is very much pivoting towards AI as a critical part of its development going forward. Are you working with your friends at Sabre on some of this stuff?
Definitely. They have a pretty good solution. They're calling it Travis, which is kind of connected to travel. Really nice name. I can say it's pretty advanced. Sabre, of course, has a disadvantage that they understand the travel information, the data structures, the how to connect with different systems, probably better than some new companies that might be maybe more technologically innovative. But Sabre definitely has a pretty interesting solution, and potentially maybe we will use it in the future. Currently, their solution is quite good for, I would say, booking, helping passengers to discover, when are the best prices to travel for certain destinations, or maybe to discover destinations that airline is flying, based on their interest or goal of travel. If you want to celebrate anniversary, or maybe you are traveling with the family for a summer trip, whatever. So that is already quite good. Where it's missing, like all other solution, is that you can start chat on your website, then you go to booking engine, it's a completely new chat. Then after the trip, maybe you go to check-in, it will be a different chat, and then if you need to submit some claim or ask for some support, it will be another chat. So still nobody has solved this problem. And this is actually what Amanda said, we still don't know where IBE is starting, ending, but in ideal world, it should, be the unified experience. So.
Okay. And obviously, as the world moves towards offers and orders, and I think we at T2RL are fairly convinced now that the world is moving towards offers and orders, this will continue to evolve, and the old simple IBE will be consigned to history. Amanda, I'm looking at the report that we published, and I'm somewhat astonished, even after all these years of doing these reports, that there are about 50 vendors of IBE solutions who are active in the market today. That seems like an awful lot of vendors for a fairly limited number of customers.
Yeah, it does, Ian. I think a lot of the relationships have been around for a while. I think a lot of the vendors, have formed IBE partnerships with their airline customers, many years ago when the IBE was so important to leveraging the direct channel. And I think some of the close relationships that these vendors have with their suppliers has probably nurtured the size of the ecosystem. But I think, we've still got, in terms of passengers boarded, we still sort of see some of the big names or the big trends still playing out. So in-house provision, for example, is still ranking number one in terms of solution providers. And I think we touched on that before. I think we've got Amadeus, Navitaire is second. Clearly, the importance of the direct channel, websites and so forth for LCC customers is definitely supporting that market share. And, Amadeus is third, probably given the full stack kind of approach that a lot of the airlines do like and do go with Amadeus. But just a couple of shout outs to my friends at Datalex and OpenJaw Technologies in 4th and 5th position, both Dublin companies. I've worked for one of them and they are still playing a very important role in the industry. So it's really nice to see.
Yeah, and looking down the list, there are one or two new names appearing. Turkish Technologies is one that jumps out to me, which is a very interesting venture from Turkish Airlines, obviously looking to establish itself as a technology vendor to the industry. And then you go down the list, which I'm doing, and you go right down to Tunnacliffe Solutions Ltda. I'm ashamed to say I know nothing about that vendor, but they have a customer and they're offering a service.
Yeah, it's a very diverse space. It's very interesting to follow. There are a couple of new players actually that didn't make our market share report, just basically because they're so new and we haven't managed to get any customer data from them just yet. But a big shout out, I think, to Retailer, which is doing some really good work sitting on top of the existing PSS and really thinking in retailing terms about dynamic pricing, personalized offers, order servicing and so forth. And then TIK Systems as well, which have a very nice digital suite. So it's really good to see that innovation is still very much happening. And that the industry is still alive and very vibrant.
I mean, TIK has been around for a long time and has gone through all kinds of evolutions, but they're very much keen to establish a share of this market going forward. Srdjan, we've suggested, we've talked about how as the industry moves towards OOSD, then even the idea of an IBE becomes a little bit outdated, and it becomes offer management and the channel to market. I am sure that our friends from Sabre have been talking to you about their Mosaic platform and their Mosaic system. Is that something that Air Serbia is actively investigating, or do you have other thoughts for moving towards OOSD?
We are definitely investigating Mosaic. I mean, it would be naturally for us to adopt it once it's ready. I think now the Virgin Australia is testing Mosaic, probably the only customer, I think. So it's still early days for offers and orders. But you are right that industry is definitely moving there. And when we move the logic from the IBE to offers and orders, IBE will become the thin client, actually the surface that users are using to book and manage their trips. But it will not make it less important, because for the user, they don't care and they don't know, and they shouldn't know what is offers and orders, what is in the back end. They should just have a seamless user experience in managing their trip. So we are definitely looking into Mosaic offers and orders, working actively on planning how to implement it. And if we will use Sabre digital experience or maybe build something custom, it depends. We will see how that will develop. But maybe I can tell you, for example, for our mobile app, why we have developed that and how that will fit potentially in offers and orders actually. So what we actually wanted is to build something from scratch and to experiment, because it was easy. We didn't have that channel, so there was not a lot of risk that we can break something. And there we focused on user experience, really, trying to make booking as easy and seamless as possible for the passengers. And we have used interesting technologies, like, it's called hybrid technologies or cross-platform technologies, where you are actually building a native mobile app for iOS and Android, but using some web technologies like Angular, Ionic, React Native, something like that, which means that actually 70 or 80% of the code that you develop can be used to actually deploy this for web and to have IBE. And then, ideally, you would have a same experience, feature parity on the web and on the mobile. That's kind of the end goal. We are still not there, and I'm not sure if we will go in that direction, but we have a capability. And what we did in mobile app, actually, we did a lot of user research. We did a lot of funnel analysis, see where we are actually using passengers in the booking process, and understood, for example, that passenger page is the most critical because it's so early in the booking process and it's so complex. So imagine if you're booking for your family, for example, you would have to add, let's say, 4 passports, passport numbers, country, citizenship, and date of birth, things like that. So people on a small screen, especially where you can have a lot of typing mistakes, drop off, they're afraid they might mistype something, be denied boarding, something like that, and go to web. So what we did, we created a scan a passport feature. You can just make a picture. It will read the machine readable part of the passport, populate everything, and you can actually save this passenger in your profile. So any additional time you're traveling with your family or friends, you would just pick a passenger, and it will pre-populate those fields, and it drop off on that screen, basically halved, by 50% reduced. We have did the same on the payment page, and a lot of small tweaks that remove this cognitive load for the passengers. And in the end, what we achieved is actually when we compared the conversion rate on mobile web using Zebra Digital Experience IB, and in our mobile app, the custom build, mobile app has 8 times better conversion rate, which is tremendous. So in that sense, orphaned orders will really help us to build this easy to use, intuitive interfaces, and to push a lot of additional services that airlines are actually trying to add to the booking flow, which are kind of making it more complex. But giving the opportunity to earn more money on your passengers.
Yeah. So I'd pick a couple of things out of that. One is that mobile is more, in some ways, more challenging because of the things that you talk about, the small screen, the touch screen, and all that, leading to potential errors, input errors. On the other hand, most people's smartphones these days are very powerful devices with some capabilities that you don't have in other areas, like the ability to scan a passport, like the motion sensitivity, like the cameras built in, all of that stuff. And you're able to exploit those things if you're in control of your mobile app development, which I think is where you're describing that Air Serbia is at right now.
Exactly. And naturally, the dedicated app will be much more responsive and faster than using a web browser, even though, you're saying, mobile phones are becoming tremendously powerful. But still, dedicated app is always more slick, let's say, when using than a website or IB, which is a web app.
Do you have a feeling for the proportion of your direct bookings that are coming through mobile now versus web?
So we are, what Amanda said, actually around 50% of our bookings are coming from direct channels, and mostly it's website and mobile app, and a little bit, of course, from call center and a few retail shops that we have. If we are looking at digital direct channels, web and mobile, mobile is a little bit above 20% of bookings. But I would say without any paid promotion, we are just acquiring those users organically. When they book a trip on web, they will receive check-in reminders, booking confirmations, and things like that, where we will advertise that we also have app. We will have a link to the stores. So mobile app, basically, since we started, every year almost doubled in revenue volume and number of passengers that is handling.
So all the tech vendors who are saying you should be thinking mobile first are maybe they're onto something there. With growth rates like that, we are heading for a mobile first world, I think. Amanda, you're waving at me.
I am waving at you. I was wondering, can I ask Srdjan a question, please?
Of course you can.
Yes. I don't know, did you get a chance to read the report? I know that you're really, really busy and you probably only got to scan a couple of pages. But were you familiar with some of the points anyway, or?
No, I read the whole report, of course.
Did read the whole report?
Yeah, of course, of course.
What do you think? What could I do? What could we do better in the report? What was good about it, but what could we improve? What would you like to see next year?
What was, like I said, it was very surprising that a lot of airlines are doing custom work, which is I think a good thing. There was a lot of vendors that I know about, the famous ones, but there was also a lot of vendors that they, like Ian, I'm kind of embarrassed, but heard for the first time. But of course, some of them are pretty local, so you cannot know in each region and continent every vendor. So that was kind of refreshing. I think someone who is looking for a new vendor and to launch IBE project should definitely read the report and study it in more detail and see who can be the potential next vendor that will best fit the airline. Maybe what could be improved, it would be interesting to add is, a lot of these vendors will say implementation timelines is from 2 to 6 months. Which usually is not the case. Maybe for some basic features, I would say, okay, of course. But if you plan for some customization, and I think every airline will have some of their own ideas how they would like to maybe differentiate and improve experience, it will probably be a little bit more than that. So because it involves payments, integration with PSS, and a lot of other things. So maybe paying attention a little bit more on that area, orchestration between different apps in the backend, how the IBE's work would be probably valuable for all the airlines. But I understand the report is already 50 pages, so going in too much details would be probably make it a book about IBEs.
But thank you. You've given me lots of good ideas, actually, for how we can evolve it moving forward. I really like that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we've had quite a good conversation around the report. The report is available to subscribers at t2rl.net. As Srdjan says, it's 50 pages of good solid data on the marketplace, and as I said earlier, we've got a bit of a historical perspective because we've just passed the 30th anniversary of the first online booking, which I think is quite remarkable. And obviously the world doesn't stand still, and the technology and the market is evolving very rapidly, and we will continue to track it. We'll also be continuing this conversation very much at the T2RL Engage conference, which is now just 4 months away in London. I would like to remind all of our airline listeners that there is no charge for airlines to attend the T2RL Engage conference, and we hope very much to see many of you there in London in September. But for right now, I'd like to thank Srdjan for participating in this conversation. It's been very interesting to me. I hope it has been to you. I'd like to thank Amanda basically for all of the work that went into the report and for the conversation right now. And as always, I'd like to thank you for listening, and I look forward to talking to you again in the next edition of T2RL Talks. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Ian. It was a pleasure.